Meta. Let's just, yeah, kind of, yeah, let's move over here. She came all the way from London, I think?
Yes, from London, very, very far away, especially if you consider the airport queues that we've been experiencing lately.
Here as well. And you will basically tell us more about, I call it like the next level of sports, sports and the Metaverse, which is actually already a big issue, but many people haven't really touched base with it yet because, even explaining the Metaverse is already complicated enough. And then, what role can sports play? And, the two panel discussions before, we got a little bit of an impression what it could mean to take brick and mortar into the Metaverse. So now we're all happy to hear what role sports can play. But before we dive in deeper into this discussion, maybe you could explain to us all what the Metaverse actually is, what potential it has, and what challenges you also still see in establishing, more and more in the Metaverse.
I'd be happy to, and thank you so much for having me here today. Great panels and great conversations. I really enjoyed the topic before. It was a great segue to today's topic. And around the Metaverse, that's a question that we get asked a lot. But if I may paint a picture around what exactly the opportunity presents. As we've experienced in the last 10 years, there's been tremendous evolution around how we consume content, how we work, how we interact, how we purchase goods and services. And, we went from a world where we used text message as a primary source of communication to photo, to video, consuming across mobile and connecting with fans and fan bases in ways that we were never able to do before. So our vision for the Metaverse is effectively to bring the world closer together and allow people to connect, to build communities, and ultimately monetize those communities in a virtual setting. So sports and virtual doesn't naturally go together. Sports is physical. It's about attendance. It's the passion that you can experience around the live game. And, as we've seen through the pandemic, a lot of industries have impacted. But one of the things that we saw within the world of sports is people were rushing to get back to the stadium. They loved that immersive experience of being on site and sharing that with their friends and families. And I don't need to tell the room, we all know and we all love sports, and that's why we're here today. But we really see this as a key, I would say, fundamental part within the Metaverse is that immersive experience. And one of the things that you can enjoy when you enter the Metaverse as your own avatar, there's a platform available to you called Horizon Worlds, where effectively developers, organizations and our partners can build their own virtual world. And there's tens of thousands of worlds available within the Metaverse today. And not only does that present a unique opportunity for you to provide a deeper experience for your fans around your sport. Imagine, for example, you putting on your headset and your avatar entering the Metaverse in your favorite sports team jersey. You're watching a game live at the same time as one of your friends or family members, across the world or even in the other part of the city. So we really see this as an additional, deeper fan experience to the current offerings that exist today. And it truly is at the heart of connecting fans, communities, and with time that will present monetization opportunities, which I'm sure we will dive into today.
I'd be really happy if we could kind of break this down just a little bit more, what you said, the avatar, going to a sports events. How does this work? Let's pretend we're at home, we want to join this game. How do we go about? And then, what senses are also activated during this immersive experience?
That's a great question. So we have been working on this for the last 5 to 8 years. And years of technological advancements, hardware reiterations, tests has allowed us to build an experience that really helps you engage all of your senses. So within the new headset Quest, you now have handheld devices that allow you to fully immerse yourself into an experience. For example, if you're sitting at home, you put on your Quest headset, you enter a Horizon world as an avatar. For example, picking a sport partner that activated recently, the NBA, they did a NBA Lanes event just before their playoffs, where they built a world where you could enter as an avatar, take a photo with the trophy, shoot some free throws, play one-on-one games with your friends. And again, the goal of that was to create an additional immersive experience in the lead up to one of their main events, which is the playoffs. So they used it in a very strategic way as part of their overall sporting calendar to drive tune in to another big moment within their sport. And there's another example. If you're looking for a much more active experience, we've partnered with Rezel, who have built a football world where you can train football, play football, you can practice your free kicks and various other tricks.
How do you practice your free kicks in the metaverse?
So you put on your headset, and hands up if you've tried on a Quest headset. All right, so a couple people. So, and it really is fascinating. It's one of those things you have to experience, but when you put on the headset, it's truly like you are in a virtual world. A lot of times when we run demos, we have to secure the space around the participants, because there's one world that I actually tried a couple weeks ago, which was a roller coaster experience. So not necessarily sports, but I want to paint the picture. And when you're on that roller coaster, my husband has a funny video of me, because you truly get those butterfly feelings, and it's because of the sound, the visuals. You look up and you see sky, you look down and you see the ground, and you really feel 100% immersed in that experience. You feel like you're on a roller coaster going 100 miles an hour down towards Earth. So, and another example back to sports is, for example, with the UFC, the most recent example, where they've decided to air. They had a UFC fight pass ahead of one of their events. They aired this live through their broadcast partners, but what they did, they also recorded the event in VR. A week after the live event, they aired that recorded archive fight within Quest virtually, which I thought was a very smart way to repurpose archive and to provide your fans with another more deeper experience around an event that you already monetized, that you already had on an exclusive basis, to then to provide them with that additional deeper experience. I thought was a very clever idea. So in that case, you could sit ringside, feel the tension of that fight right in front of you. We really want to bring people to the action. We want to give them the feeling of, this is what it feels like to be a player. This is what it feels like to get courtside seats at a game. And the great thing that provides with the great opportunity that provides for the world of sports is now you can engage fan bases around the world that you, in a very deep and meaningful way. Fans, for example, NBA fans in China would find it very difficult to purchase a flight, a ticket, to travel all the way to the US and experience the home game of their favorite team. Whereas now they can do that from the comfort of their own home and truly have that immersive fan experience themselves.
Are there estimations about how much the sports market in general could grow, let's say, with the immersion of the metaverse into the sports market? We've
done the analysis, and I think we haven't even scratched the surface. If our goal with the metaverse is to climb Everest, we are not even at base camp yet. We are really just starting to understand the opportunity that this presents. And what I want to stress is that it is our partners that are testing this this opportunity themselves. They're the ones that are building the metaverse in partnership with us. This is truly for them a new revenue stream as much as a new way to engage fan bases. And when we're talking about monetization and the potential that this creates, you can now look at, if you're airing a game live within the metaverse, you can now sell digital sponsorship. That inventory within the game belongs to you. You can now sell sponsorship solely in the metaverse. You can sell tickets only for a virtual experience to your most hardcore fans. Or you can sell, if you've got your subscribers, you can sell it as an additional pay-per-view add-on to your package, the metaverse experience, to create that much deeper fan engagement. So for us, enabling monetization is key to the success of the metaverse. And we are really seeing partners get extremely excited by this opportunity because, again, it allows them to critically think about how to activate fan bases in a more strategic way, but also how to diversify their revenue streams in a sustainable way for the long term.
And what is the feedback so far from your partners? How are fans taking this, and how are they, diving into this world? What is the acceptance rate?
It's still very early days. It's still a very niche experience. We have exceeded our expectations in downloads, purchases of the Quest headsets. What we're really working on refining is making sure that we enable our partners to build their own worlds and their experiences as effectively and as efficiently as possible. It's still a heavy lift. And to those of you that we've partnered with, or those of you that have explored this, you will know that it's quite a technical undertaking. It's no easy feat to create a great, seamless virtual reality experience for your audience. So the barriers to entry are still quite high, which is, one of your initial questions, what is one of the challenges? And it is that. And that is because we are still early on within this journey. But from the use cases that we've seen, our expectations have been exceeded, and partners that have activated successfully have, lent in more than we would have anticipated. We've worked with, players, athletes. We've worked with leagues and federations, broadcasters, free-to-air to pay TV. So the exciting thing about this is that there's a use case for every possible organization within sports.
What are some of the prominent use case? What are some prominent examples to kind of depict what is going on in the metaverse with regards to sports right now? When I was preparing this, I came across the fact that Manchester City, for example, is building a stadium in the metaverse. What are other examples to?
Yeah, I
to
mean,
show?
anything from our partnership with Rezel, where you can play soccer and train. We've actually had Premier League players and F1 racers train through the Quest headset, to partnering with clubs to do jersey launches and releases for avatars specifically, to NBA activating ahead of the playoffs, streaming games and virtual reality. Sky Sports, for example, in the UK, stream one Premier League game live through their Horizon Worlds app. We are working with various partners now, and a lot more to be announced in the next couple of weeks. But we really are looking at diversifying the types of experiences that users can engage with.
So what would you advise companies that are hesitant to get, touch base with the metaverse? What would you advise them to do right now?
In terms of the hesitation, all I can really say is, we truly believe that this is the future. There's a reason why we're investing into this space and why we're working with some top partners within the world of sports to build this immersive experience. So where it aligns with their wider goals and objectives, I would definitely encourage them to lean in. If not, at the very least, try to experience it yourself so you know what this world and this experience looks like. But if you are a partner that wants to get involved and you're trying to figure out where to start, and on the technical side, the barrier to entry is very high. You know, you need a large budget to build the technical infrastructure. I would suggest that, you know, really do the groundwork around fan analysis, gather data about your audiences. You know, the panel before, they spoke a lot about being intentional with who you target and being very strategic. And myself, coming from Meta, I represent the Facebook family of apps, from Facebook to Instagram, WhatsApp, and Messenger. And one of the things that we always encourage our partners to do is really understand your fan bases, focus on building community.
Across the apps.
Across the family of apps, you know, and look at your holistic strategy. How do we activate on Instagram and Reels versus how do we activate on a platform like Facebook? What does our audience want? What type of content can we engage them with? How do we create more buzz around those live moments? And what we've seen, that partners that have lent into those opportunities have actually uncovered new revenue streams as well that are incremental to their existing ones. So what we heard a lot in the past was, you know, we've seen publishers be very careful with the type of content they post and almost holding back, which is understandable. You know, you need to make a decision what goes on our O&O versus what goes on third-party platforms. But by some of the examples we've seen earlier and what we see today on Instagram and Facebook that works really well, it is those community-focused pieces of content, shoulder content, bringing people close to the action, telling the story of your game, and almost seeing the Meta family of apps as a way to gather data around the type of community that you can then, you know, activate and monetize, whether that be through branded content and sponsorship, or, you know, getting them to buy season tickets, downloading your app, or, you know, subscribing to your content.
So what I'm also hearing from you basically is that there are, you know, the amount of creativity within the sponsoring area could increase due to engagement in the metaverse.
For sure, and it really is the partners that are building this for themselves. The opportunities are endless, really, and you can just, you know, put on your creative hat and think of how can we activate our fans within the metaverse, and what are the type of add-ons that we can offer them, you know, whether that is them purchasing virtual jerseys, NFTs, you know, to the sponsorship that it presents, selling them virtual tickets. I was speaking to a colleague earlier where I said, you know, you can look at it as a toolbox, and you've got all these different tools to choose from, but not every single one is going to be applicable to what you're trying to achieve. It's about you as an organization being very deliberate about the fan base you want to activate, the revenue stream that you want to open up, and then using the tools presented to you in order to achieve those objectives.
In one of the background talks I had today, somebody said, you know, I asked them about the metaverse and, you know, are you engaged there? Are you thinking about this? And they said, you know, we're kind of waiting because is this just a short-term trend, or is this really a long-term thing developing? Is that a thought that, you know, you come across very often? Is that still very, you know, in the focus of potential partners?
I think from naturally there's the question of what is the value proposition and the trade-off if we're going to invest. But what we've seen is that because it is incremental and it allows partners to engage with fan bases in new ways, that is ultimately the USP that it provides. And this is where we've partnered with the likes NBA, you know, to NFL, to various other agencies, athletes. We are seeing a lot of organizations really leaning in and building for the future, and really tapping their toes in the water. So for us, it's 100%, you know, here to stay. It's a big focus area for the company. And one of the things that we're going to be focusing on is creating a seamless experience within the metaverse and really enabling our partners to enter and activate and monetize as effectively and efficiently as possible.
So if there are potential partners that are thinking of investing, what do they have to think of? I mean, what sums of money are we talking about? And, what other aspects do you have to keep in the back of your head?
I would say
because it's just so different. It's such a different world.
It is a different model. And there's a lot of agencies that we work with, developers. So the route into building a presence within the metaverse is partnering with developers that are currently doing this for the other publishers. There's a list, I believe, on our website, if people want to check that out, of which agencies we recommend. And starting those conversations, understanding what the scope of opportunity is, but parallel to that is really doing their own homework around what could our experience look like, not just today, but within 5 years. What do we want to achieve, and how do we ensure it's sustainable? Because I truly believe, I've been working in sports in the last 10 years, and we've seen trends come up, and at one point it was around owning your own direct-to-consumer service and launching your own OTT, and there's so much hype that kind of comes every couple of years. But what we've seen that has really had long-term success is partners that are very deliberate and very strategic around the reason behind that activation. There's a lot of direct-to-consumer services that quickly had to pivot or completely change strategy because they rushed into a trend because it was a trend of the moment and it didn't align to their wider goals and objectives. So making sure that you're very deliberate, I think, would be my key takeaway, and deliberate around the fan bases you want to activate, but also the path to monetization that you want to explore.
What are the most popular sports in the metaverse right now?
It's hard to say. I think we've seen, we don't really have the data on that yet. I would say it's still early days, but we've seen, a lot of engagement, again, around the NBA. I've mentioned them several times. The NFL, they did a partnership with Status Pro to activate and show some live games. In the past couple of weeks, we've had, anyone from DAZN activate to the UFC, as I mentioned. We've got a lot more partnerships coming up. So it really is a diverse offering that we have. I wouldn't say there is a one favorite top sport that at the moment has emerged. And the experience is so unique and personalized to the users. For you as a fan of extreme sports, you can go into the metaverse and ride a bike, off a cliff, which is something that you maybe wouldn't have been able to do in the real world. It would take a lot of training, and you're safe. That is another difference. It really opens up the potential for our partners.
How would you bring this experience to the metaverse? Because I think anyone riding a bike off their cliff, I mean, how could they describe what the experience is afterwards? So
I think you have to experience it in order to really know it, because on one hand it is me. There's only so much I can share with words, and I think after this, to those partners that are interested in getting started, I would recommend to try it out, get the Quest, and try on, see what other partners are doing, get involved, and see how it aligns to your goals and objectives.
You just touched on sustainability. Sustainability was actually a huge issue yesterday, also in this room. How could the metaverse long-term help create a more sustainable world?
In terms of sustainable revenue generation, or you mean
in general,
environmentally sustainable?
Environmental sustainability and the other sustainability goals.
When we're looking at what it can do to drive environmental sustainability, it is massive. From some of the examples I referenced, that fans can now go to a match without having to fly X many miles with a plane, reducing carbon emissions, to virtual again is and reduce the impact that the virtual experiences will have on reducing things like waste and all the kind of I would say the other areas around what it takes for you to travel to an event. So I think And what we do today as well, from a Facebook perspective, we enable, millions and millions of small businesses to sell and advertise through our platforms. We've helped them develop a virtual presence to connect with their customers on a variety of levels. So hopefully we plan for that to carry on into the metaverse, which again, creates a more sustainable world, both in terms of environmentally, but also in terms of business.
And what about social inclusion? We had a panel on the Special Olympic World Games, which are going to take place in Berlin next year. So I was wondering during that panel, how could this also play out in the metaverse long-term someday, perhaps?
Yeah,
the aspect of social
I love
inclusion.
that you ask that. And we're actually working with the Special Olympics as well in Berlin next year. So we, the word social inclusion is really at the heart of what we do. We are about building communities, bringing the world closer together. Some of the sports that we've seen do the best in terms of engagement, community activation, whether that be through Facebook groups or Facebook Live, are sports that are rooted in community, like triathlon, for example, and others. So we really see for social inclusion, it just limits the barriers to attendance. You now, don't have to spend your whole wage on traveling and planning, and you can now experience an event with your friends live in a virtual setting and connect with athletes in a much more meaningful way, and they really understand the experience of what it means to be a Paralympic athlete. So if anything, I believe it's a massive opportunity for social good as well, and for sports that really are looking sports that thrive in community engagement and are rooted in community engagement will really see a great fit within that space.
Now, you personally are also someone that champions women in sports. You founded the WBR Network. Yesterday, we had some very passionate women up here on the panel about women in sports. Victoria Berlin, network of women who bought this soccer club, women-only soccer club, and we're all very excited to see how the story will play out. What about gender equality in sports? What role can the metaverse play?
In terms of women's sports, I would say it's, we've seen women's sports thrive on Facebook. And not only because the leagues and the clubs have lent in, but also because the athletes are such great storytellers. They're so accessible. You only have to look at the success of the Women's Euros this summer, the Lionesses, and how they used social to connect with their audiences within real time, going live from the pitch, sharing reels.
We're all waiting to see if this momentum will sustain.
Hopefully. I mean, I truly believe it is. And you're seeing brands more interested in the women's game. I was fortunate enough to go to the Women's Euro with LinkedIn, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind me sharing this, but they said, the reason they invested into the women's game is because of the social value that it represents and the messages that are transferable to wider parts of society, and how great of storytelling opportunities this presents, and they really are committed to the growth of that game. And there's a number of brands that have specifically invested into the women's game. So I truly believe that the momentum is there, and especially if you're talking about the metaverse, the one great thing about women's sports is that it's less commercially constrained. Athletes are more accessible. Commercial partnerships are less established, which I now see as a good thing, because it gives the sport more freedom to activate, and there's no necessarily chains that binds them to certain agreements that may limit them from fully engaging in this experience. So what I hope to see for women's game is broader and bigger fan bases, more activation across digital in the metaverse, but also off the metaverse, and more exposure. It took, couple years ago, the women's Euro sponsorship rights were bundled in with the men's. And back then it seemed, like a great idea because you back off of the men's success in order to grow the women's game. But now what we see in hindsight is what an incredible opportunity it was missed back then that now, has been achieved, where the women's game was bundled out of the men's and they were able to find sponsorship and commercially grow that property. So it really takes that investment from an early on stage to recognize the opportunity of the women's game and to say, you know what, I'm going to treat this like a brand, not just as an add-on to the men's, but this is a brand that needs to be cultivated. What are the stories that we want to tell? How are we going to attract the fan bases that are going to go and consume this content? And then how do we go to market to monetize that through sponsorship? Because there are brands that are looking for that type of activation. So hopefully we'll see that continue to grow.
I would like to end this panel or this discussion between you and me on a similar note that I ended the other panel, asking you, with the job you have and with the time you basically have to spend in the virtual world, how do you keep the balance? And how disciplined do we all have to be in future to keep this balance?
I think that, over time, there's not going to be a difference between the virtual and the real world. Just yesterday, I was at a conference at the UN where there was 5 of us as panelists, and 3 were dialing in virtually on Zoom, and half of the attendees were attending virtually. And they're still, a panelist as much as anyone else is. And it was a hybrid event, which I thought was incredibly interesting. And we will probably just see that increase more and more over the years. Us, ourselves as Meta, we've done a couple of events that are purely virtual where you have to attend as an avatar to experience presentations and networking, which, again, depending on your level of comfort with virtual, I think it's up to you as an individual to determine how deeply you want to engage with it. But what I can say and what the data shows is that that's the world that we're moving into, where especially young generations, I myself have a young son, are growing up in a digital first space. The way that he interacts with content, the way that he sees my phone is so natural to them. So we're going to see more and more a blend of the physical and the real world.
Says Anna Chanduvi. Thank you very much for coming and being here with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.